Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. My name is Christine Devlinek. The Sacred Window refers to the tender, magical, and remarkable weeks following the birth of a baby. A birth giver is forever changed. Recognizing that this time is too often overlooked and misunderstood in our modern culture, we're setting out to be part of a voice for change and growth. We're growing awareness and broadening the reach of conscious postpartum care. Our podcast features friends and colleagues as interviewers. We're a loving community united by a common passion to change the paradigm of postpartum care to one that honors women, birth givers, babies, and families. We're glad you're here.
And I will never be the same again.
Hi, this is Roshni Kavate. I'm your host on the Sacred Window Studies podcast today, and I'm very excited to be talking to Zaure Vuk, a student at Sacred Window Studies and also an entrepreneur, early childhood educator, and a mother of four. Welcome. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Roshni. Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm very good. It's very nice early morning here in Orlando.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about, your life, sort of your journey of where you come from and what you're doing today. I just feel like you have so much incredible energy every time I talk to you. Not only are you raising four children, you own a business with your husband, you run daycare centers and early childhood centers in Cambridge and Florida, and you're also going into postpartum birth work, and you are writing and teaching. You're just doing a lot.
Yes.
Any secrets to your energy?
Well, having a good husband who helps you a lot, for sure, or maybe train one if you don't have it. I think from the very beginning, when I had a first baby, I made it clear that, you know what, I've carried her for 9 months. Now it's your turn. I never changed the diaper. I actually never fed with the bottle. So that was my agreement with my husband. But yeah, even though he is very helpful and I felt like I was pretty good at my boundaries and everything, postpartum has been a very traumatic experience for me personally. I had 3 pregnancies and 4 children. Last pregnancy was twins. So, but I feel like that has really kind of created the framework and the reason and motivation why I am right now here in Sacred Studies. I've been observing you guys for the last 4 years, I believe. I talked to Christine multiple times, and now I'm excited to finally, now that my twins are 6 years old, I can actually focus and change, or maybe at least bring more awareness to postpartum window. But yeah, so having 4 children, I feel like that kind of dictated our direction. We were both musicians before. My husband is a violinist, I'm a musicologist. And when I came to the States back in 2007, my background was administration, arts administration in Chamber Music Society back in Boston. And then that's how I met my husband. He had a music school in Cambridge. So we kind of, we were traveling, touring musicians, and then we got pregnant. And that kind of changed trajectory of our lives. We thought we would have a small childcare center for just our child, and we thought we'll have music every day. That was our motto. And then we started a daycare and just took off. I felt like there was a very big need in Cambridge, Mass, and we kind of followed it. We built out over 8 or 9 centers right now. The COVID, affected, of course. We had to close some of them. Now we are reopening slowly. But this has been for the last 10 years, it's early childhood education. But parallel to that, I've really been very mindful about the adult, not just, the baby and taking care of the baby and rearing the baby, but what's happening with the mother, right? Like that beautiful quote I really like to say, when the baby is born, so is the mother. And we never really think about that. And that's more so now that I'm focusing and actually have my hormones balanced back again. I actually can focus. I can think and I can see clearly that really within the, at least in American society, that's where I actually did have my babies. I am from Kazakhstan, from Central Asia, and it's very different approach, and having that shock of difference in expectations and reality, coming from Kazakhstan, where moms have 3 years of maternity and they have mothers and your aunts and your cousins come and help. And it's really like practical help, taking care of the baby, taking care actually of you as well, making sure that you are well. And that was my framework and my kind of worldview of pregnancy. And then I come here to the States, and I actually did post yesterday on my social media is that how traumatic it was for me to realize that, 3 to 5 days into my postpartum, I actually was expected to go back. We was just building a daycare then. So it was a lot of work to do, of course, but it was a shocker to me that, my in-laws, so to speak, at that point were expecting me to come back and actually build out the whole building and sand the walls. And I couldn't fathom that. But now that I see and observe more and more, that's pretty much norm within the American culture. Like you're 6 weeks in, you still probably haven't healed from delivering a baby, but then you're expected to go back and just like bounce back. And yeah, so that's kind of the why I am here today. I'm here on this journey as a postpartum doula, and mostly as an educator, just bringing awareness. Now that we do have a daycare centers, we have over 800 parents who brought the students to our centers, and looking at them back, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, it's Harvard, MIT, Boston College, like all these beautiful universities that attract worldwide students from all countries. I would say like 75 to 80% of the student population are immigrants as well, who sometimes don't have that support either, or maybe they have their parents come and help, but it's very temporary, and they really don't have that support. And I felt that kind of desire to step in and fill that gap, and at least educate and give them some type of words of encouragement. This postpartum is hard, but it's gonna end at some point.
Yeah, I want to start our discussion there about, finding empowerment and autonomy within this beautiful traditional setting, because, postpartum culture has been very traditional. It's very much, centered around your family, where you're from around the world, the food you eat, the practices, so many times that can be mixed with your spiritual and religious practices. It is so deeply personal. But I think what you're talking about, at least in a modern American sense, there is no culture around it, I would say. Or there is a culture, but it feels very isolating, like you said. It's not tethered in any culture, right? Parents are just sort of like left to fend for themselves. And there is a lot of richness we can draw from traditional cultures. And I think there is this idea, I think a lot of people also feel the loss because either people are displaced or have moved to the US, and don't have that connection anymore. Either because they're not with their parents, or many people don't know, what their culture was like 200 years ago, 300 years ago. So there is this deep loss. So I'm curious from a very, personal perspective, because you grew up in Kazakhstan and, could really, hold on to so many of the wonderful cultural traditions. In your postpartum window, like what did you practice that were, very classically Kazakh culture, postpartum practices? And were your parents involved? Like, how did you stay in touch with them?
Yeah, totally. So out of the 3 pregnancies, my parents were able to come to the third when I had twins. I feel like they saw me struggling with the 2 newborn babies. They're like, okay, that's enough. We're going to go and help, which I'm grateful for. And that was where I saw the biggest difference, I guess, how that was processed by them. My mom came and she would, give me massages. She would wash me in a bathtub. She treated me like I was baby, and she would cook and clean. She would take care of my older kids, and I felt like I think that was my biggest realization. So, oh my goodness, there's it can be different, right? And it should be different. So yeah, she would give me massages. She would help me with breastfeeding, and she would take my twins so that I actually can sleep. She would just say, go ahead and rest. That was like non-negotiable for her. Like, you need to rest, you need to take care of yourself so that you can take care of the babies. That was her approach. So I know that, I just saw my mom, and I saw my mom's friends when I was growing up, just seeing that, when you have a baby, for example, for the first 40 days, you don't even show it to anyone. Like whoever comes in, like very, very close, circle of your family who can come in. Like for 40 days, you're like in a cocoon. You're being cared for. You're staying preferably in the dark room, so there is no bad eye. So it's just that's how it is here. Like with my oldest one, within like 5 days, I was shopping at Target. So it's just like I was kind of going back and forth. I am an observer as a by nature. I really like to observe what's happening. I like to make connection or to compare mentally since I was a child. So I was looking at back and forth at like what was my experience with my first two kids, and my experience with my twins. And yeah, for 40 days you don't do anything. You're being cared for. Your meals are being cooked for you. Your baby is taken care of. Like they take it away from you so you can rest. They do a lot of I think my mom would always say, you so that your milk is more fatty, you eat a lot of nuts like walnuts. So nutrition is very important as well, right? Drinking. And I think there's different, kind of not natural, but national foods that mostly, involves meat and broth, bone broth. So it's it's not necessarily intentional, but it's just a part of the diet anyways. So you kind of, you drink from that already, that's there. So it's not necessarily anything specifically different. But at 40 days, you have like a celebration. I think that's the first time when the baby's nails are cut, and the first time that the baby's hair is cut. I remember 40 days I was flying from Boston to Miami with my daughter, and my mom called me. She said, "Zoe, do you remember today's for 40 days? Don't forget to cut your hair." And I was skeptical. I kind of really didn't pay attention much of tradition. I became a Christian when I was 18, so I was trying to move away from my kind of pagan traditional approach, so to speak. So I didn't really pay attention, but out of respect to my mom, I'm like, okay, I'll just cut it. So I cut it. I remember that morning in Miami, I just cut a little bit of her hair and her nails, and it was some kind of deep spirituality piece was kind of part of that ritual. Even though I didn't make much of it, even though my attitude was different, it kind of brought into realization, this is a new human and I'm caring for her, and just kind of hits you different. And I did struggle with the postpartum depression, which again, I didn't know what it was. And while I was pregnant, while I was right before going into pregnancy, doctors, OBG would say, you might have baby blues, you might have depression. And I really just kind of brushed it off. I'm like, no, that's just nonsense. I won't have it. So when I did have it, I don't think I realized it until I actually was on the other side. And I'm like, no, I think something was different. So it was very lonely. It was very, very, very isolating. And at the same time, I was mentioning in my post yesterday, we were building a daycare. We were having a biggest concert in April. I had a birth in December. In April, we had a very big concert. We called it Exibus World Orchestra at Jordan Hall in Boston. So I didn't have much to really rest and think and actually pay attention to myself. So I kind of was more of an automatic state. And yeah, and when I had a baby, we actually had a series of Christmas concerts. We were full-blown musicians at that point. So you kind of, fulfill your obligations to your followers or to your people who come to your concerts. And so only I think in June when we finally opened the daycare, and I know, I had somebody commenting on my post is that saying, I remember the same feeling, that isolation and overwhelm and just being in the fog. But good thing I did have my own business, so I could go to it whenever I could, or whenever I felt like I was ready. And I was thinking, yeah, but at the same time, well, I had my business, but sometimes business doesn't mean that it's 9 to 5. It's actually 24/7. So, and especially building from ground up, that was very, very, very big undertaking. I don't know why we threw in the baby into that. Looking back, but just it unfolded, and then we kind of worked with it. But yeah, feeling my mom's support when she came, and just being cared like a baby after having twins, it completely gave me a different perspective, and actually opened up horizons of what's possible and what's available.
I'm so glad your mom was able to baby you, like you said. That's such a beautiful, beautiful imagery, and feed you all these delicious foods. I'm curious, like, if you can talk about while she was there, you being an educator and living in the US and you've traveled the world, obviously, how you see the world is probably very different from your mom, who grew up under very different circumstances,
Yes.
coming from Kazakhstan and, especially just, geopolitically thinking about, the effects of communism and war and all of that. Can you talk about like how all of that cultural forces and just your own personal, family dynamics within your own family, like what were those challenges that you navigated within your family context, but also, just for yourself as identity of being a parent now, things that came up that you were surprised, going, wow, like I didn't think, something from when I was 5 or 6 or things that we just, don't question. And now you start to question because circumstances are so different or culturally things are so different. Yeah, I'm curious, like what were some areas of like conflict or just even exploration that came up for you?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I know in America right now, for example, it's a very big movement, right? Like bringing traditions into American culture, that beautiful community piece and elders and everything. And I'm curious. It's not necessarily I'm just doubting it, or I'm just observing it. And questions that I have for myself is that yes, you can bring those traditions and you can bring those beautiful rites of passages and community. However, it comes with certain, I think, expectations, right? In those communities, especially speaking of my own background, right? You kind of live in a society where you just respect elders no matter what. It just comes automatically. You never question them. You never tell anything against what they say. It's just very, very like obedience and honorable attitude towards your parents, towards your elders, which not so much in America, right? Like it's just really, really interesting to see. So then, yeah, when my parents, for example, came and, my mom still have that. She's not doing it explicitly, but I know it subconsciously that's what's expected, right? So if I did something different with my babies, if I was bringing Montessori parenting into my in my parenting style with my kids, and she would also always say, what is Montessori? I remember Montessori got a very bad rap in Kazakhstan because, any school would just open and call themselves Montessori because, Montessori is not trade marketed. Anybody can open a daycare and call themselves Montessori, but there's no necessarily preparation of adult. There is no training that was, done with the teachers. So it was just a chaos. My mom would come, she would teach English and Kazakh in those daycares, childcare centers, and she would see a complete chaos. Children, not really listening to adults. It was very, very different from what Montessori actually should be. So she had a very negative experience of that. So when she was talking to me about the Montessori piece specifically, she's like, no, this is just so bad. You should raise your children, making sure they obey you, they listen to you, they respect you. So that was something that we had a little bit of a discussion and disagreement. And, I kind of figured out, that's where my American, so to speak, transformation came in, right? Being here for 12 years or 10, 11 years at that point is like, okay, well, I don't necessarily have to agree with you. I actually can have my own approach. So that I felt was very offensive to my mom. So that was really interesting to navigate as well, and just understanding, well, at some point, what is more important, right? Being right and just really get into my own game and just prove that I'm right, or just accept my mom who she is. I mean, she was there maybe a month, 2 months, and just be grateful for where she is, and just acknowledge and be grateful and give her that honor that my culture requires. That's in her blood, still subconsciously still there. So I was navigating that just by observing and exploring what's necessarily her need, what is my place. And maybe if we lived in the same country, in the same neighborhood, it would have been probably it would have looked differently. However, she did notice, my second son, I think he was like 18 months old, and he would just climb the table, the chairs. He would just sit at the table like, adult little man. He would ask for his bottle. My mom would fill his bottle. He would grab it. My mom was looking at him like, oh my goodness, he's so independent. I said, yes, that's what Montessori is. So she kind of converted to Montessori after seeing that with my second son. And she loves that now. She reads my posts on Instagram, and she's like, this is phenomenal methodology and approach to the child, and just giving them that independence and supporting them when they need. But I see that, a little bit of a difference. Okay, American culture, this is who I am, right? And, I have my own way, and we can disagree respectfully, right? And in traditions, it's not necessarily so. There is just certain ways that society, in traditional society, so to speak, is set up. And I'm trying to see how can we bridge that. And I think that's why I love that doula piece, when you're non-judgmental and you just come in and your sole mission, so to speak, to be in that space is to support the mother, whatever she feels intuitively she wants support with. No judging, no actually advising, but kind of, helping her wake up her own intuition, right? And confidence, and just build that up in the mother instead of trying to have her dependent on you. Because in both, like in America, there is no support. There is possibly, right, there's just, that's needed. That's just kind of it's already been proven, right? That's why we have doulas. But even in my culture, I see that that space when you actually, if you are trying to create your own independent core and trust your own intuition and become a mother who you like, the one that you want to become, based on your values, based on your worldview, not necessarily maybe one that your elderly community has. So doula then comes in and she doesn't have that expectation of you completely, and completely obeying and listening. So that non-judgmental attitude is kind of covering both fronts. So I really appreciate that. And the more I learn and understand the role of the doula, I feel like that's definitely what fits me. Coming with the Montessori approach, it's like, in the Montessori, you as much as you can possibly over the years, going through the training and preparing yourself spiritually, you get rid of all the prejudice that you have about the child, all the past experiences that might come into and create some of the prejudice and judgments. And so I feel like now that I had that for 10 years towards children, I can apply as a doula. As I come into a mother, I just observe, I reflect, and I support wherever she needs. In the Montessori, the child, we say that the child's 3 to 6, they always want to tell you, help me to do it myself. Don't do it for me, but just help me so that I can do it on my own. And I feel like that kind of applies to doula role and the mother, right? I am here so that you actually can do it yourself, and kind of transition you into this new phase of your life, supporting you and help you and sojourning with you for like 6 to 8 weeks or however long it is.
Yeah, I love how you were talking about the difference between empowerment and just sort of like taking over and deciding what's good for somebody. And I think new parents have so much confusion and fatigue and fear that they are looking for guidance, but can sometimes feel overwhelmed when somebody just sort of takes over, or even I feel like a lot of education around early childhood is so prescriptive. There isn't room for sort of your own discovery and trust building. Everything sort of, you're being a good parent or a bad parent, no matter like what you believe in. There's so many like styles or value systems. So I love that, you're talking about engaging and awakening to your own values and to trusting yourself. I'm curious, did you always know like what kind of parent you were or wanted to be, or was that a discovery? Was there a transformation where you went from like, okay, I know what I want to do because this is not what I wanted for my own childhood? Did you catch yourself doing some of the things you grew up with and thinking, oh my gosh, like, how do I change this? Like, what's your parenting journey been like? And, like, how do you feel like where you are today? Like, what was that process like for you?
Yeah. So when we got married, I remember I actually didn't want to have children. We had quite a few conversations with my husband, Christopher. And I remember I was saying, I love my life now. I love how we, just travel, we play music, we have concerts. I like this life. I don't really want to have that responsibility that parenting brings, that just extra layer of responsibility. I felt like I really didn't want to have children, at least for the next 5 years. And then we got pregnant a year and a half into it. Again, as I was speaking earlier, being converted to Christianity and still living like a very, very strong Christian background. Early, maybe few months of Arella's life when she was born, I still had that, authoritative approach, that I don't know if you know Dr. James Dobson from whatever parenting radio, that Christian parenting radio that we have. I felt like it was very aligned, right? Don't spare the rod, so the child wouldn't be, spoiled, or So that was kind of what I was aligning myself with, Proverbs of the Bible, and just very authoritative. And that's what I was exposed to growing up as well. It's just really authoritative parenting style. And looking at the child, you feel that's an empty vessel, and you have to fill it up, and you have to shape it, and you have to mold it. That's the language that I've heard and I was agreeing with. And once we opened the daycare, we had many parents come in for open houses, for tours. And, being from Harvard, MIT background, they would always ask, what curriculum would you be using? Because this is the people who are valuing education. And we didn't really think much past of music every day. So that made us think about the curriculum and approach in education. And my husband, he's very smart salesperson. So he would, I'm not even sure how he knew about that, but he would start saying word Montessori. And I noticed everybody whoever from China, Germany, France, South America comes in, everybody knows Montessori. And I got intrigued. I'm like, what is this Montessori? So I got this book. I think it was purple. I believe it was Montessori method book. And I think I read it within possibly 3 or 4 days. I was just so engrossed by the methodology of just respect for the child, following the child. And it just made sense to me. It was very contradictory to what I grew up, to what I was believing and aligning myself within the Christian community and culture. But it just made sense to me. And just the basic piece of respecting the child just because he is a human being or she is a human being. While, in Christianity and my own, I guess, upbringing in post-Soviet Union culture, right? It's like respect is something deserved, is something that you have to earn. And here it was something different. It was respect that it's something that you give, and you give somebody who not really deserving, like a baby. What is there to deserve? So that really changed completely 180 degrees of my understanding of the child, and understanding that child is not an empty vessel. They already come. It's like a seed, right? It's just a small seed, but everything that the tree needs, it's already within that seed. And, now the association, people would say it's not, the drop is the whole ocean in one drop, right? Like whatever that beautiful phrase, I'm completely botching it now, but the point is that child already has everything.
Imagery.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's true. And as I observe, like with every child, I was kind of practicing more and more Montessori, and my twins are definitely the crown of this journey, I would say. The more you observe, the more you can see, oh my goodness, they actually smarter than I am, because they don't have the baggage, they don't have lenses, they don't have any like past experiences that can skew their perspective of life. And actually I'm learning from them. And Montessori would say, child is actually the maker of man, and he is our teacher, and he is our father, because actually from the child we come. Adults. So those experiences the child has, that hands-on experience that form the intelligence, they form the character, personality, everything, they have to do it themselves. And if we impose it them, we only just create more resentment on their side. Because, if you try to do something and person is just trying to come and tries to do it for you, that's annoying. So it's the same with children. That's the biggest thing also, is that we don't make our children share. Sharing is caring is very wrong. If they are trying to, if they have their own property, they try to kind of figure out the world, and through the experiences and hands-on touching and observing certain toy or material, if somebody comes in and want to take it away from them, that's just kind of violation of their boundaries, so to speak. And that's what we teach children, right? Without sharing is caring, like, okay, but then we end up with a bunch of adults who like do not have any understanding of boundaries, healthy boundaries, or how to protect it, or even where they are at. So I feel like that's been really, really big for me. So we've been homeschooling my children since 2017, thank God, because then I was prepared for the pandemic. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to do that, I feel like. Because, coming from not wanting children, now having 4, it's quite a big of a transformation. So I think that was a little bit of a journey, I would say, coming from not wanting children, then maybe having that Christian authoritative approach, like church pastor, coming from a authority and just imposing it on children, to like reading this book and just really realizing completely different approach and respectful approach, and where you both actually co-creating your own relationship, a trust that's based on trust. Also trusting child and his or her capacities, and leading or guiding them. You're like a coach to a child from the very young age, and knowing that they're actually capable and they are pretty smart. So that's kind of transformed and as I was mentioning to my friends, is like, it's pretty much probably a lazy parenting, because for the most part, you have to step back and let them do it, which gives you more time to go get a coffee. So I feel like that's what really fits my temperament right now. And it's a huge work. It's a huge work for adult. It's not necessarily, okay, now I have the tools to raise my child, or now within the childcare, we also implement Montessori inspired principles. It's not like, okay, well, this is the curriculum, this is what the child needs to do. No, it's actually the vice versa. It's what you need to not do, to let the child to do something that he thinks is right and good for him at this time. But it is a very, very large work. I did training, Montessori teacher training back in Gordon College in 2013. Then I did again in Cambridge, Montessori in Cambridge in 2018. And when I did homeschool my children, it's still my old nature, or my old conditioning would come through. So it was really, really transforming my own temperament, my own practically, right? Because I knew it in my head. But when you are in the moment and you're observing the child and he's doing something wrong, you kind of, my hands, like by instinct, would go and try to help or try to solve it for them. And I would Maria Montessori practically said in her books, just sit on your hands. If you want to help, just sit on your hands and do not get up. And another trick that she gave, she was a very strong Catholic believer. So she gave those rosary to the teacher. She's like, before you get up and help, count the beads on your rosary, to give that to, it is, I believe, a muscle, right? Just mindfulness. So like, okay, I can actually count to extra 10 seconds before I intervene. And in the moment, I actually can observe, can the child resolve that problem or solve that, which they are wired for that, to solve their own problems, and they will be more proud of themselves. It builds their self-confidence and self-pride. Okay, I did it. Remember, if you've seen the children when they're very young and they did something on their own, like, I did it. It's just so much joy, and it builds that confidence in them. And it's so much better than me coming in and do it for him or for her. So Montessori has been really like last 10 years journey. Now I'm doing masters in Montessori, and now I'm trying to find out. And within the master program, we do have that dialogue. How do we bridge Montessori for children to the Montessori for adults? And that really brings into this kind of framework is my parents, right, within the daycare. That's why I'm developing the parent education program right now within the work study with you guys. And then also non-Montessori educators. Can I reach to them and actually kind of bring that mission of Montessori inspired? That's not behavior based, not that Dewey philosophy, but actually development based, evidence based, as we talk. That's really supporting child development. That's natural and not necessarily behavior.
Yeah, and I think you're highlighting how each individual child is so different. And I think as parents and educators, we need to sort of identify, you're kind of sensing who this child may be, what they need emotionally, like what feels secure to them and how they can sort of come to life. I feel that so much parenting advice and, just ways of parenting, be it, within the US, like European style parenting or more traditional cultural parenting. I think the commonality is so much of it is obedience based. You look at public schools, it's very much that, right?
Yes.
If you are a neurodiverse child, or just like I call it like creative, like being a creative child, you have to be shut down, you have to be medicated, you have to be tested for something like deeply, there's something psychologically wrong with you. But I think because we're not, I think what you're talking about is we can't look at children as this like homogenous experience. Like they're not all meant to reach the same milestones, act the same way, behave the same way, do the same things. And I think as a society, I can see like, people don't want that because they want something that's dependable, controllable. And I think the minute we have to adapt to a child, and they're changing constantly. That's a lot to ask from parents. And I think maybe societally, we don't have support for parents. So I can empathize with parents struggling. There's just so many layers of, lack of support and protection for parents, and also like lack of educational resources. Just from raising your own children, like how do you as a parent navigate sort of the fears that come up, or even like when you think like, you are, I guess I could call you a childhood expert, but even, within that context, do you ever go like, oh my goodness, like, what am I doing? I have no idea what to do with this child in this moment. Like when that happens, like, how do you navigate that experience within yourself and your child, or when you just can't connect with them? How do you like come back to your own truth? And because ultimately, I think that's all we have, right? It's that like deep trust that your child well, what they need. Hopefully, you can read that and offer it to them that's supportive. And I think for a lot of us, like we didn't get that as children, right? Like it was just sort of obedience, like you said, respect at all costs. We weren't parented according to our unique nervous system. So what would you recommend to parents when they're just going, okay, I'm trying this, gentle parenting or intuitive, trauma-informed parenting. I want to do this thing right, but I just can't connect, and I'm so frustrated. And those instincts of, maybe you're just frustrated, you're getting angry, like stuff, that just comes up. That's reality. Like, how do you take a pause and, get to your center and find your way back to yourself again?
No, that's great. That's a good question. So I feel like I start with saying that I don't think I'm a childhood expert in the sense that I know the children, because that's I don't even know myself at times. So I just feel like just starting from that acceptance of like, okay, I don't know everything and I don't have to. And one days it will, some days it will be hard, some days it will be easy. And it is a process, right? So I think, first of all, just starting with acceptance. I don't know everything. With what I know and with the information I have, I can start here, but the child is the one who knows, and I'll just trust the child and just observing and reflecting on your own things that come up, which for the most part, when I observed, the observation within the Montessori is very, very important. And whenever I observe, especially in the beginning stages of my work with my homeschooling children, and also in the daycare when I would go in the centers and observe, for the most part, you end up observing yourself. What prejudices come up? What judgment comes up? What stigma comes up? What cultural, biases come up within me? So first work is always on you. What is it that I need to let go. Second would be probably expectations, adjusting expectations. Are we like obedience, right? Why the people want obedience and why they want something controllable? Because it's convenient, right? So I feel like another piece is just, okay, am I expecting just this process, building relationship, trust, and moving through life together with the child? Or do I look for some kind of tangible results? But then I will be disappointed, because you can't, as you said, children always, as soon as you feel like you figured them out, they change. And it's normal, because the development of the child is, it's not linear. And Maria Montessori talks a lot about in her writings is that we think of, child of 12 years old is more intelligent than the 5 years old, which is not true, because the work that 5 years old is doing, acquiring language, refining their movements, finding their balance within the society. They are doing so much more work that we adults do, we don't really realize, because we rarely have a chance to observe that and actually come to terms of, okay, they're growing their own teeth. They're trying to start to walk. That's very big pieces of and accomplishments that require a lot of work. And I remember Monte Gerber would say, she is a rise specialist, which is kind of Montessori, but for the babies. And she would once told the dad who was trying to bring his child to a gym, he's like, I really want him to work out and get stronger. He's like, well, why don't you observe your baby and try for an hour at least do what the baby does. And if you think of them rolling, crawling, trying to balance on the fourth, I think it's exhausting for us. But we don't realize how much work it is for the child as well and what they are accomplishing. So adjusting expectations, what am I looking for? Like, what is my value? My value is just kind of control this baby and control this child, or actually letting go and control myself. And my motto as a Montessori mama, as I say on social media, is that I don't, it's in Russian, it sounds different, but basically I don't raise my children, I raise myself. And, there's a big piece of, speaking of inner child, right? And just really that what it comes up, because you deal with your own children, you kind of are faced with your own inner child, what the trauma you had, what condition you've had, what pain that comes up. And then you just go back and work on it, have mindful practices, have some energy or healing practices, have any, support that you need in the community through that to deal with that. So expectations would be the second one. And yeah, this development that comes in curves and really non-linear, also understanding that at 6 years old, the child completely changes. At 12 years old, they completely change again. So we are not creating a model of a car that, okay, at some point it's just easy to drive, but it's an individual. It's a separate person that has their own life. They will form their own values. They will form their own worldview based on their experiences, like I did, or based on mine. No matter how my parents tried to control me, I still had my own life experience. I became a Christian in the atheistic family, so it's like, how much can you control? Actually, nothing except for yourself. And practice mindfulness. I think mindfulness has really been really helpful for me within last few years. I just kind of discovered it, and the breathing techniques, meditations, and just really going back into trying to understand yourself for the most part. Then you probably can understand something about your child. I don't know if that's helpful or comforting.
No, that's so helpful, because by the time you're trying to figure out your kid, you don't even know who you are, right? And I think the hardest part sounds like letting go of control and figuring out some trust and this communication between you and your child, where it seems like there are no words, but there is a lot you can gather and start to really develop that muscle of intuition, trust, and taking their lead. It's been a really great conversation. Thank you, Zaure. I guess on a parting note, we'll wrap up our conversation. I want to ask you, what has been the biggest transformation for you, growing up in Kazakhstan, moving to the US, having a children? I mean, it just sounds like, your life has turned out to be so differently than maybe you imagined. Is there a part of you that's remained and changed, that's still, like your values have remained the same? Is there something like deep within you that always like that you carry with you, no matter where you are? I'm just curious because we feel like sometimes, you know, we can't recognize ourselves, but I feel like you said, the seed, you know, that you've always known is there. And I wonder how people can like find that again within themselves. So yeah, I'll leave you with that question as we wrap up.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I've been actually reflecting about this the other day because I have a very good childhood friend. We've been friends for like over 30 years now. And she just opened her first painting gallery in Helsinki. And as I look back, I remember all the time when we were children, since we're like 9 years old, she always liked to draw. And she would always teach me how to draw the, you know, ballerinas or palms on the sunset. So I remember that I was like, how interesting to see that full circle, like that childhood passion now becoming as a business or becoming as something that she is doing meaningfully for her community. And I think for me, it's always been self-care. It's always been like, I remember since I was little, I would do different potions and everything for skin and hair. I would put whatever, like eggs and potatoes on my face. And, you know, in Kazakhstan, you don't have those luxury of, maybe they do, I mean, they do have it now, but growing up in the post-Soviet Union regime, where there's very, very big lack and deficit of everything, you just kind of use your, whatever you have in your refrigerator. That was been really, really big thing for me. And now that I am trying to come into the doula, I'm trying to think of the ways that I can bring this passion into the word, you know, postpartum caregiving window, is that pampering aspect of caring for the mother through beauty and self-care rituals, and actually, you know, reminding that this is important. So I think that was the biggest thing that I kind of carried through, and I'm reflecting back and I'm bringing it back, so to speak, resurrecting after having children and educational background. But also I love to read. I think that's also something that I kind of try to protect. If I like to read, I'll take time and I'll make it a priority, and I read, and that makes me feel accomplished, so to speak. You know, in motherhood, many times you feel like you're not achieving anything throughout the day. So I felt if I at least know that I read one, you know, chapter of the book that I really like, that gives me that sense of, okay, grounding, right? I did something for myself. And another thing I feel like is the third, I would say, is really knowing my boundaries, in the sense that I really never cared for what people would say about me, or, you know, I see that sometimes it is a struggle for for other people that I didn't realize, but I really never, you know, gave a damn, so to speak, to like what people are thinking or what people are expecting of me. I've had this, I think I was, for the most part, was raised by my grandmother in the early ages, and my grandma always gave me that freedom, and just kind of, you know, you have your mind of your own, and giving that space for me to develop. So I felt like that's been really, really helpful for me, just to know what's right for me, and just not trying to find validation, not compare myself, excuse me, with anybody, but just like, okay, this is right for me, this is what I'm doing.
I love that. I think that is sort of the greatest gift we can give ourselves, is to really not, you know, factor in any external ideas of like who we should be, what we should be doing.
Yes.
And, you know, just feel free to be ourselves, and, you know, be able to just find that comfort to, you know, be as is. Where can people find your work? How can they connect with you?
Well, my Instagram is montessori.mama. It is in Russian though, but you can translate if they're interested to learn more. But I am right now, I've written Rock and Roll Method, a book that's available on Amazon, but it's mostly for my daycare. But it does talk about my parenting and the values that I've kind of got from the Montessori approach, and observing and reflecting back on my own parenting. So it's called Rock and Roll Method. But yeah, so on social media, it's Zaure Vuk or Montessori Mama.
Great. Thanks so much, Zaure. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. Bye.
Same. Thank you. Bye.
Shine.
How can you bring something sacred to your current window of time? What do you have to offer to someone within their sacred window? We honor you for all you give and for who you are. Thank you for listening. The Sacred Window podcast is brought to you by the Center for Sacred Window Studies. You can visit us to find out more about our online training and mentoring programs, plus resources and products for and about the sacred postpartum window at www.sacredwindowstudies.com. Editing of our podcast recordings is done by Sienna Butler, and our music is written and performed by Sarah Emmett. You can hear more of Sarah's music by visiting www.sarahemmett.bandcamp.com.